Hi, I am Tony Russo from On Deathcare, and this is The Rest, funeral service news for the week ending Friday, May 8th, 2026. This week, we have stories again about the Texas Funeral Service Commission and some of the shenanigans going on in Texas. I just finished writing up my Carriage Services analysis, and I'll share a little bit of that with you. And of course, other news from around Deathcare. But before we get into everything, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our paid subscribers who make this show possible. All of our subscribers are who I do this for, and I'm very happy to have paid and free subscribers. If you'd like to be either, please go to ondeathcare.com to sign up and make sure you get the newsletter. And the newsletter has all of the breaking news. I did a fun story this week on Dan the Funeral Man, who is having a viral moment on the internet. And, you know, it really, I'll take a second to talk about it now. It really plays into my notion that I've been harping about, I think, for a while, which is the CEO as the face of the business. And this story, and read the story, I'm proud of the story. I think I did a pretty good job. But the takeaway isn't like a how-to go viral. I mean, he did a couple of things that you need to do if you're going to be in a position to go viral. He played the right music and he was on the right platforms and all of those things. But the point wasn't to go viral. The point was to try and do something a little bit more interesting for his videos that he makes for his community. And we've talked about that. I think last week or the week before, there was a funeral homeowner who was kind of going through this is what our renovation looks like, and this is how I'm choosing the different things that are going to be in the new funeral home. You know, staying in touch with the people who you matter most to, which are your eventual families, is a critical part. And doing it in an interesting way, making it so that they see you as a person, not as a mortician. The Dan Madden, who is Dan the Funeral Man, was very proud of, how he's trying to shake off this notion of the dour mortician. And I forget that it's a notion because I've only been at this, 4 years. But for me, the idea of a dour mortician has never really been part of my existence. But there are people that still have that stereotype in their head, and knocking it down is an important way to let people know that funeral service has probably changed since they were children, especially if they're older folks like me. Anyway, so there's a link to the Madden story in the show notes, but you'll also find it among all the other stories at ondeathcare.com. And again, thank you so much to our paid subscribers for making it all possible. All right, let's get into it. This week, the Houston Chronicle published another story about the Texas Funeral Service Commission, this one using items that had come into their hands, phone calls and text messages that were from people on the inside. And one of the things that it purports to show, and you can have to read it to yourself to see whether and if they're successful, is that the Abbott administration was a little bit more in the know than they have claimed to be so far. Let's be practical. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the Texas governor is going to be the Texas governor, and whoever is the Texas governor can do whatever they want. And, nothing anybody, certainly not something anybody in Maryland like me can say is going to change that. But there is a certain erosion of respect that I used to have a boss who always said, when a fish stinks, it stinks from the head. And that was his way of trying to take responsibility for, whatever shenanigans were going on below him. That's not something that leaders do anymore. Obviously, when something stinks, it's because you need to fire or some other way impugn your underlings, because if you're on top, then you can't be wrong. Otherwise, why would you be on top? It's a very 21st century capitalist American kind of approach. And it's too bad because, you see all of these, a leader does this, a leader does that. In in practical application, as someone who just does the news and has no pretense about being a leader of any sort, leaders to me seem like the kind of people that blame other folks for what's going on around them and then explain why they were completely not at fault, no matter what it is. And this is particular to elected leaders. But I think that has more to do with the electorate. The electorate attracts a certain type of person rather than a certain type of person is attracted to the electorate. And Texas isn't alone, but Texas is an excellent example of how poorly things can go and how quickly they can go as poorly as they've gone. But anyway, I've got another story coming up that I want to talk about that's not dissimilar. It's not related, but it's connected, I think, to the Texas Funeral Service Commission kerfuffle. And I've got that one coming right up. Prosecutors have dismissed 3 counts of abuse of a corpse charges against Gayle Bell, who is the co-owner of Houston's Richardson Mortuary. She was caught up in a scandal of body mishandling charges from like a year ago, from before a year ago, but April 2025 is really kind of when the family stepped up. And now it's important to remember that the Texas Funeral Service Commission didn't have anything to do with this until after families complained. Once the families complained, they got involved. And this is one of these, there are lots of stories that I would like to tell, but I have only one of the 2 dots that needs to be connected. And this is one of those stories that you feel like eventually the other dot will come out and you will see how the investigation into this actually undermined the prosecution of it. And if that's the case, that's the second one in as many tries that the Texas Funeral Service Commission has helped to botch. How many more? I mean, I guess if you're going to do poor case management, then it's easier not to have people go to court. And I think that's why so many of these cases remain unprosecuted or unprosecutable. You'll recall, if you'd like to go back and check, there was a crematory operator who was in cahoots with who was allegedly in cahoots with a body broker type person in this funeral. This cremation place was testing out new embalming methods, on parts of bodies that had not been cremated, and that one also, for some reason, just went away. I think the more that comes out about how both Governor Abbott and Kristen Tips and her husband Dick Tips are involved, we're going to see that. I don't know if it's malfeasance or negligence, or, I mean, it's possible that it's just bad luck, but, you can only have so much bad luck before you have to ask, is this really chance or am I doing something to contribute to it? But anyway, there's a link to this story about Gayle Bell in the show notes. There's a body mishandling case in Utah that, no good news ever with the body mishandling, but there's, I think, something to be discussed about it. So just really as quickly as makes sense, there was a body mix-up in Utah where the wrong casket was sent to the gravesite, but it was not buried. It was a veteran's funeral, and after the flag was removed was when they noticed that they had the wrong casket. The family left, and the funeral director called them back and said, "We had the wrong casket. We're going to have to switch it." The family got very upset, not blaming anybody for being upset about this kind of thing. But and they sued, and there's a report about the suit. It's really not what this story is about. What happened was, though, the people, the K2KU TV, the television station that was doing the reporting, decided to look into what was going on at the Division of Professional Licensing, which regulates the industry. So again, there's what passes for the Funeral Service Commission in Utah, and they just went back through the archives to see how complaints are handled, and they pulled up another case of a person having forgotten or neglected to put the viscera back into the body, and so burying it outside, and it was discovered. And the whole story is about how they tried to keep it away from being a police matter and tried to kind of keep the mistake in-house, and how that looks in retrospect. And it doesn't look great in retrospect. It's so funny as a person who just I only read the worst stories, and it's one of the things that I can say is it never helps to try and make things right without admitting you did something wrong. You can't just make things right without an admission, even if it's an admission that things were beyond your control, but I was there when it happened. And the arguments about whose fault it is just look pettier and pettier as things go on. One of the two interesting things about this story is this is not going to be the last time somebody's like, oh, I wonder what other cases have come and gone in this particular state or jurisdiction. And when you're at the Funeral Service Commission or funeral board or whatever they call it in your state, and the fact that there's none state to state recognition of who does what and how is also obviously an issue. But being forthright is critical. One of the things, though, and this is really one of the main reasons I wanted to talk about it, is the reporting ends with advice to consumers about how to protect yourself from this kind of thing. And it very specifically says, and I feel almost certainly that a funeral director helped vet this story, is like, ask about tracking. Do you have tracking? What kind of tracking do you have? How does it work? These are things that people are getting more savvy about, and it makes more sense to be ahead of them than to be behind them. Anyway, there's a link to both of those stories in the show notes, and the regulatory bodies they're on my list of things that we need to get sorted out. But that's another story that we'll be following as it continues. Yet I figured I'd give you a quick update on Carriage's earnings. Now, last week, because of timing, I didn't really get to do a podcast update on SCI and Matthew's reporting, but those are on deathcare.com. And if you are not a subscriber, you can still read them. Just go to deathcare.com and you'll have access to all of the stories. But what's interesting is one of the things that SCI said was that they're not waiting for people to come to them. They're going out to find their next acquisitions. And so it was interesting to hear Carriage say that they have almost the exact opposite problem, that there are a lot of funeral homeowners who are coming to them and initiating deals or trying to initiate deals. And the big news is that they they got permission from the board to have $100 million at their disposal in at-the-market sales. And so if you don't follow the stock market or anything, the at-the-market means that they can sell more stock if they want to. And that has mostly benefits. The downside is if you own Carriage stock and Carriage adds more stock to the mix, then your stock is kind of worth a little bit less than it would have been if they didn't. However, the way that they have it set up, it looks like they're going to try to make it fund itself when they need it. So Carriage was expecting to add between $5 and $10 million in acquisition revenue this year. They think they're going to do better than that. They are eyeing several more deals, or they have several deals in the works, and they expected there'll be an announcement. There might be an announcement when you're hearing this. There's an announcement coming up in May, but toward the end of the year, toward the end of 26 or the beginning of 27, Steve Metzger said that they will be making some big purchases. And so what this $100 million at the market opportunity is if they find the right thing, they're going to buy it. But the other thing that he said that was really interesting, and I had never seen it this way, is, sometimes you can't buy the best funeral homes, and growth is one of the things, or the potential for growth, and the attachment of a cemetery are the two main things that Carriage is kind of looking for as they're buying new properties. And the reason is that, you buy a lot of these very big, very well run places, and there's no growth left in them. There's no growth. Like the better the business, kind of the worse for the consolidator, because Carlos Quesada, in an interview I did with him last year or the year before, a while ago, has been very clear that they want to. They're not participating in any kind of race to the bottom. They don't want to go in and cut. They're not looking to go in and reduce services. They're not trying to find profit by cutting. They're looking to find profit by doing a better job at selling and a better job at servicing. And they've been putting their money where their mouth is for the last 2 years. I've got to be honest about it, because I'll slam them when the opportunity presents itself. But they've upped their cemetery game, very much like SCI. SCI had a 10% growth in their cemetery game, and this isn't a real number, but the CAGR number, CAGR, which is it's a formula that compares sales over time and takes out the confusing parts. Is the simplest way to put it. But since 2019, according to this metric, Carriage is up like 22% in cemetery pre-need sales. And not 22% over 2019, but 22% over where they would have been if there was no pandemic and all of those things. It's complex. The point is that they're very proud of their cemetery sales, as SCI are. So this is something that is going to be a very big part of Deathcare and in the acquisition market for the rest of the year. It's going to be it'll be a fun summer, and it's kind of on its way. But anyway, there's a link to my story on Carriage in the show notes. That will do it for this time. The rest has been an On Deathcare production. It was written, edited, transmogrified, chopped into little pieces, and served up however you got it by me, Tony Russo. Thank you so much for staying with me. Please subscribe if that's your bag. It's nice to know that when this goes out, it's going to get into the right people's hands. Special thanks to our paid subscribers who make this possible and doable. Every time I get a paid subscriber, it's like a little power up. It's like, okay, you're on the right track and people like what you do, and that makes me happy. But every time I get even any subscriber at all, I just get a little ping like, all right, someone cares, someone wants to know, and now it's your job to tell them. I take this very seriously, even though I'm a kind of flippant person. So I'm doing my best for you. And if you guys have anything that I'm not covering, or that I'm covering in a way that you don't like, feel free to reach out and let me know. And I can take everything under advisement. I get lots of tips, and many of the stories, actually even several of the stories I went over today, were because people helped me out and pointed me in the right direction. That'll do it for this week. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm on vacation. A vacation isn't the right way to put it. I'm driving to Massachusetts, where my daughter will be graduating from law school, and I'll be clapping for her. I'm I'm a huge fan of my daughter. I'm not a huge fan of graduation ceremonies, but and that doesn't matter because it comes with the territory. So I will not see you next week, but I will see you the week after. And in the meantime, I'll post updates on deathcare.com. And also, I don't know if you're following me on Instagram. We are on Deathcare, all one word, on Instagram. And I post stuff. I post little clips. And maybe while I'm away next week, I'll take some cemetery photos or some funeral home photos and throw them up on the Instagram. So follow me there if you choose. Follow me any place that you choose, as long as I'm making it worth your while, which I try very hard to do. All right. We'll catch you next time.